And I'll just start by introducing myself. Here's another person. So my name is Savannah Parison. I'm the lead staff advisor at the College of Creative Studies. There is another staff advisor as well, so there's always at least 2 people available to help in the office. Her name is Megan Peterson. And we are available to help answer your questions, especially about sort of CCS in general. So GE questions, coming to campus, what's orientation going to be like, those kinds of things. That's stuff that's definitely in our wheelhouse. And then we're going to have this panel really focused on sort of the majors as well, but a lot of those questions are similar from all the majors. So we're going to be kind of talking about how those particular students respond to those general questions in that environment specifically. So it tends to work out really well. But anyway, that's me. I've been at CCS less than a year, but I've been at UCSB for 3 years. So I am very familiar with like student advising like across campus and sort of big picture policies that way as well. And Carl and Richard, I don't know if you guys want to take the alphabetical order track since we've got 1 math and 1 computing, or what you want to do, but I figure you'll introduce yourselves first and then we'll go with the students.
Hey, I'm Carl. I'm one of the 2 math faculty. What else? I don't know what to say. Canadian. That's kind of a fun fact.
Okay, cool. I'll go next. So my name is Richard Wang. I'm one of 3 CCS computing faculty here at UCSB. This is my 3rd year at UCSB. Before I came here, I was actually faculty at UC Irvine. And before Irvine, I was a software engineer at Amazon. So I kind of have academic / industry experience all around. So yeah, it's been great. CCS is a great place. And of course, if you have any questions, just let me know.
All right, so we've got 4 student panelists, and that is Brian, Aaron, Rebecca, and Yash. So that might be the easiest way to just kind of go in that order as we go through.
Okay. Is my microphone
on? We can hear you if that's your question. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm Brian. I'm a 3rd year computing major. Next year I'll be doing my master's degree at UCSB in computer science as part of the BSMS program. Yeah. Unless there's more you want me to.
We'll learn a lot about you, I think, as the panel goes on.
All right, cool.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm a 3rd year computing major also, and yeah, I guess I'm not sure what else I need to add in that.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a 3rd year math major in CCS. I'm graduating this spring, so this is my last year.
Hi, I'm Yash. I'm also a 3rd year math major in CCS, and yeah, I'm heading into my 4th year. I'm not graduating yet, taking my time, but yeah, nice to meet you all.
All right, so one of our first questions we cover kind of cuts straight to the point because this is intended for prospective students who probably have offers from multiple colleges, and one of the burning questions is how am I supposed to choose between all these places? So our first question is really intended for those students, which is when you were a high school student and you were graduating, what was important to you when you were considering which program you wanted to go to, and what factored into your decision to come to UCSB and CCS?
So I guess I'll start first. One of the things I really wanted to look out for was, will I get a good quality education? With computer science, I don't think job prospects are something that you would really have to be too worried about, given how popular the demand is and how high the demand is. So I would really, for like computer science, I'd be looking for what kind of education can you get out of wherever you're going to go. And this is going to be in the form of, will the class sizes be small? Will we get more attention? is the school known for its good education? Do you have opportunities to learn things that you would not learn at other places? And I thought that, okay, let me say my comments. Yeah, so this is just the general things I was thinking about. And there's also like cost. Do you wanna come to, you know, a public university, or do you want to go to a private university, which is far more expensive? Other things are like, how large is the university, right? Can you, is it really kind of like a small place where you're going to get crammed in with, you know, just a few people and become really good friends with them, or is it going to be a very large place where you can meet a lot of different people and get to do a lot of different things? Personally, I really wanted the kind of smaller college feel, which is why I ended up coming to CCS, but I also wanted to be able to meet a lot of people, which is really nice because UCSB is a really big university. And I thought that with smaller class sizes and CCS would be a great place because definitely I'd be able to make a lot of strong friendships and get a lot more individual attention. That kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess I can go now. Yeah, really similar to Brian. When I was deciding which school I wanted to go to, I was, I guess, leaning more towards smaller private colleges because I just wanted the personalized experience. Also, another thing was I was really interested in computer science, but I also wanted the sort of flexibility to, I guess, explore other interests in combination with computer science, because in high school I was really into media arts and sort of you know, finding ways to apply CS to other fields. And so that's one thing that really appealed to me, was being able to experiment with, I guess, other types of coursework and other types of interests. So I guess, for example, I did a lot of research in haptics and virtual reality, which was, I guess, something that you can't really do at a lot of other schools, because I was able to take courses in those fields, but also have them count as upper division units. So while I was able to, I guess, take sort of a very unconventional route, I was also able to fulfill my degree requirements. So I think that's one of the really important things that that helped me while being in CCS compared to the college engineering or another engineering program at another school.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. I guess I didn't really know what I was looking for in a college. I mean, I knew I wanted to go to a UC, but that was kind of it. But the reason that I chose CCS was because I really liked that it was a supportive environment. Like it was very small, and my advisor was very like involved in helping me out my first year. And I felt like I really wanted that in a college. Like I didn't want to be competing with people. I wanted people to be helping me out. And I also really liked that the first year classes felt very fun to me. Like they were interactive, and we were like proving things right off the bat, and all the problems were very fun. So I don't know, I guess that's why I chose it.
Okay, yeah. So when I was looking for a college, I was looking for a lot of the same things that Brian, Aaron, and Rebecca have mentioned. I'm not sure if because of the COVID situation, if anyone has been able to do this, but when I was being interested in CCS, Carl and Maribel, who's the other CCS math advisor, invited us to like sit in on one of the classes. And it was there that I was able to see like a lot of the collaborative tendencies in CCS, and just like how the environment was in class. And that was really important to me. When I was looking for a college, I wanted something where I could meet a lot of people who were as passionate about what they wanted to do in college as I was, and were like, you know, willing to put in the work, and would be like just interesting people to talk to. That because it's the students who really make the environment in a university. And I thought CCS has a lot of really impressive people who you can learn a lot from every day. So you're learning outside of class just as much as you're learning inside of class. And also, like Rebecca said, the advisors are really hands-on. They're not just making you out on your own, and you just see them once every few months. They're really involved in your academic life and like advising you in all sorts of ways in CCS. So that's what really attracted me to this program.
Richard, what is there any sort of additional things that you think for your programs tends to draw students specifically to CCS?
I mean, what Brian said, I think you get that small college atmosphere, but also the big college atmosphere at the same time. You're surrounded, as opposed to like a typical math program, you're kind of all surrounded by a small group of very talented mathematicians or computer scientists. And that's inspiring. It's a little intimidating sometimes, I would imagine, but it's also very inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with every point that everybody has said. I think advising is one of the small like environments. We kind of call ourselves our own tribe, you know, because we really build community. But I think that kind of extending to what Aaron said about, you know, it's not like a choose your own adventure in terms of like getting your degree. We do have requirements, but we do have a lot of flexibility that not only just in UCSB, but pretty much any college campus that like the curriculum that I know of, we like CCS students really have an accelerated pathway to complete their lower division requirements early on. So you get to the good stuff really fast. And it's one of those things where, you know, depending on the student, there is kind of like different paces, but let's say that you are really passionate about computer science and you really want to get to the good stuff, machine learning, AI, networks, computer vision. Generally, if you go through a structured curriculum, like in the College of Engineering, you don't really get access to these courses until sometime towards the end of your second year or third year. But in CCS, you know, based off of advising with your advisors, and we kind of see where you're at, we do give early access to a lot of the good stuff early on. And that is something that really makes CCS unique in my mind, is that flexible curriculum and really pushing our students forward and like really getting into the good stuff early on, because the whole point of CCS is really about the engagement of creative activities. So we want to make sure that students are doing well academically in their courses, you know, checking off those boxes, getting good grades. But at the same time, we really do push students to really apply themselves and actually like pursue creation in the field. So that's something that I feel is really unique to CCS that you rarely find in any other program.
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, one way I tell students they can think of CCS as is like you're skipping the first 2 years of a regular math program, and that allows you to kind of get into the deeper stuff much quicker.
So that ties in really well a lot of what you guys are saying, especially about advising, to one of our next questions, which is about a component of CCS that is really, really unique on campus, and that is the relationship with a faculty advisor. So in many other departments, sort of UCSB is really large, and the most advising that students get is from a staff advisor who is familiar with the program and that kind of thing, but probably isn't an expert in the field itself. But CCS students are assigned a faculty advisor when they enter, and that faculty advisor can serve as a mentor throughout their time at CCS, and there's a check-in process every quarter at a minimum. So one of our questions is, since each student has a faculty advisor to guide their academic career, what role do they play in your life at CCS? And so we'll start with the students, and then we'll sort of see how the faculty want to add on to that.
For me, I feel like probably the biggest thing that the computing advisors have done for me is to direct me to the right people. So the CS department at UCSB has a lot of faculty members, and they're all experts in different things, as you would kind of expect at any university. So for me, what I really like to do is learn about programming languages, and I am kind of more of like a theoretical computer scientist than someone who's really more applied. So what was really valuable for me was the advisors, the faculty advisors they gave me suggestions on who I should talk to and maybe things I should explore, as well as students that were kind of interested in things that I was also interested in. So I found that these connections were actually incredibly valuable, and you know, they really have the time to sit down with you and talk about your interests and your career goals and what you could possibly do. And I thought that was incredibly valuable to me.
Yeah. So I guess compared to the College of Engineering, I think the students' relationships with their advisors is a lot more, I guess, personal compared to just going in and getting your classes approved and then probably not seeing them for like the rest of the quarter. But Richard and Phil, who are the advisors for the computing major, are just like so awesome and just super friendly. And it's great because it's great because you just always feel comfortable to just go in and talk to them. Like sometimes during advising, we just end up like sitting in and talking to Richard for like an hour just about like random stuff or just about life and just and also it's great because not only do they have experience as professors and as academics, but they also have a lot of experience as industry professionals. And as someone who wants to pursue more industry-based route, it's great to just have a very honest conversation about what you're doing right now and I guess what your options are for the future. So it's great sort of having that mentorship and just being able to always feel comfortable to email them or to just like step in their door or anything like that.
I don't know about TS, but for math, we are required to meet with our advisors for like half an hour every quarter. And also my advisor taught most of my classes freshman year, so I usually ended up seeing her a lot more than that. But it was really helpful having that freshman year because I really I went into college, I feel like very, very blind. I didn't really know what grad school was. I didn't know what classes to take. And she really helped me figure out what my goals could be and what my options were and what classes might be right for me, and stuff like that. I think that, and she helped me get involved in research and then also helped me figure out some conferences that I could attend during that year. So I feel like the advisor relationship was very helpful for me getting started. And I think that now I kind of pick my own classes more. So, I mean, obviously she checks in to make sure that I'm still on track, but it isn't as hands-on as it was in the beginning because I've kind of developed those skills over time. But my first year, it was really instrumental having that.
So for me, I kind of came into college knowing kind of what area I wanted to do. I know I was more interested in applied math than pure math, but what your advisor is really important in is figuring out exactly what that means, exactly what your schedule is going to look like quarter from quarter. So you're not overextending or burning yourself out, because that's something that can happen in college, especially CCS students. We're very notorious for going all out, taking 24 units, even though when it's not something that maybe we should be doing, because that's just a lot of work to do. And so advisors are really helpful, not only just on the academic side, but a lot of them really help you personally. Obviously there's mental health services on campus, which help you a lot with staying on track. But a lot of what our advisors do, it's a very personal relationship. So they're there to help you in more ways than just what a normal faculty advisor would be in any other department or any other school. And then similar to what Brian said, my advisor was actually really instrumental in getting me my internship last summer at the Los Alamos National Labs. I wasn't even thinking of going in that direction. I knew I wanted to do research over the summer, but I didn't know exactly where or how it was going to happen. And I didn't think of the National Labs, and they're a great resource, but I wouldn't have gone towards them at all if it hadn't been for my advisor. During just our scheduling meeting for classes, she told me, yeah, this is a great opportunity. I know there's people here who are doing research in the area that you're interested in, and there are programs for undergraduates specifically, so you should sign up, give it a chance, and I think it would be a great opportunity for you. And so that was really, really important for me, because that summer was especially impactful. Now I have a much clearer idea of what I want to do for my research. It's really important for my grad school applications, because It just gives me an idea of what labs and schools I want to apply to, and it's really shaped a lot of my academic career and moving forward. And that's important. You're not going to get that at a lot of other schools. It's going to be kind of more superficial, but because we spend so much time with our faculty advisors at CCS, they know a lot more about us and they know what can help you. And that's just really a huge advantage.
I would give a faculty a chance to kind of speak to anything else that they might want to address in terms of what it's like to advise students and how that's different. I know, Richard, you've got a dual appointment and things like that, just between letters and science and then College of Creative Studies, or COE in this case.
Right. I could go first, Carl, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so part of CCS, part of what the faculty in CCS do, a major role is advising. So we really get to know the students, and a lot of CCS, a lot of the faculty, I think the majority of the faculty generally have joint appointments. So I am actually 50% computing in CCS and 50% College of Engineering CS. So I wear two hats and I'm basically in both parts of campus, approximately 50-50. The reason really for that is, the CS department in UCSB and this computing program are very closely related. They are separate entities, but at the same time, the resources are shared. And I feel like my role and my colleague Phil Conrad's role is really to know what's going on in the computer science department, know our faculty colleagues, know their research, and kind of like what Brian was mentioning, a lot of traffic directing, because Phil and I would say we're smart people, but we don't know everything there is to computer science. That we're not like the experts in everything computer science. We have our specialties and so on, but a lot of our role is to really try to identify what are the passions and interests of students, what are their career goals, and really try to match what the best resources are, because that's kind of our role. It's given really motivated students, given the appropriate direction and given the appropriate amount of resources, we really want to see our students thrive above and beyond what any program or any structured curriculum would give. And a lot of that goes into the experts in our computer science department. So advising, a lot of it is traffic directing and just getting to know the students and trying to help them reach their goals. And that's kind of where I feel my role as an advisor is.
I don't know if I have anything to add. Everyone else is an advisor. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I usually try to stop people from too much. Yash, Yash indicated that. But I don't know if I have anything to add. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think one of the things that I think it was Aaron or Rebecca brought up earlier that I just kind of want to touch on, because I think it is something that's kind of neat about CCS, is that for so many students, they are taking classes with their advisors as well. So something that I've frequently heard from CCS students is part of how their relationship with their advisor gets built and why the advisor has so much knowledge of them personally as mathematicians or as computer scientists, is that they're also in the classes and that they're also the teachers. So it's not just that they're kind of in that one office for the 1 half-an-hour appointment per quarter, it's that they've also seen their students in the classroom, and they get that kind of dual angle. One of our questions, since you mentioned kind of advising students about their workload, is I just want to take that opportunity to talk about the CCS workload. CCS students often take advanced courses, both in terms of the acceleration path when they first get to UCSB, but also CCS students typically have more access to graduate coursework when they get to more advanced stages. Or the ability to take a higher course load. So typically in other colleges, students are restricted to about 16 to 20 units on average, but CCS does not have those kinds of limitations, but with great power comes great responsibility. And so I wanted to talk to our students about how do you manage that workload and those opportunities that potentially go above and beyond.
Okay, so let me start by saying take as many units as will keep you sane. I took 24 units my first quarter, which basically translates to like over 80 hours of work per week. Don't do that unless you think you can handle it, because it's really stressful. I mean, it's great that you have this opportunity because you have an opportunity to learn more and maybe at a faster pace. But it's also a lot of work. It's really demanding, and if you really do want to, have a very high course load, then you're gonna have to end up making some sacrifices or some trade-offs, right? But you get this opportunity, so if you really want to, if what I did was I took I think last quarter I took three. Is it three? I took 2 graduate courses and 3 upper division courses, and I did research. That was killer. I basically had no free time, but it was really rewarding, to say the least. Unfortunately, my social life basically became non-existent. But you have this flexibility. If you want to do that to yourself, then great, go ahead. If you don't want to do that, then that's also fine, because you can take your normal course load, you can relax, and you can still learn a lot. And when you have fewer courses, you can dedicate more time to each course, right? So it's really what you put in is what you get out. And if you have more courses, you have less resources to distribute among each course, right? So you don't get in as much. And another thing to consider is if you're taking a lot of courses, then you have less time to do things you could study outside of class, right? So maybe you're interested in working on some project outside of class. Well, if you take more courses, you have less time to work on that project, right? So it's kind of really managing how much are you willing to learn by yourself versus how much are you willing to learn alongside other people, and you have to kind of carefully balance that out, right? But in general, I feel like CCS has been really great at granting these opportunities, because you have this option. If you want to take more courses, you have this option. And if you want to take graduate courses, well, it's even better, because now you can just, it's actually really easy. You just go up to the professor, you ask, hey, can I take this course? And then you have to do some paperwork, but then you can try it out, feel like if it's right for you, and if it's right for you, then great. If it's not right for you, then, well, there's not really any penalty for not doing it. But it's great because you have all these options, and it's not like you're missing out on anything, right? You can try it, and then if it works, then it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really interesting question for me, because I actually struggled a lot my first year and a half, 2 years of college, because I guess this is the one thing that I do mention when talking to other students who are interested in the program, is that, it's a program that is not one size fits all. There are, I guess, you have to be an independent learner to succeed in this program, meaning that that the adjustment to college, you have to be okay with, sort of skipping over that and going straight into upper division. So for me personally, it took a lot longer to sort of adjust to doing college. But I guess after that, I kind of figured it out, and I'm basically over that stage. But for me, it did take a long time to fully grasp that. And, before you can really, start, expanding, what you want to do, you have to first master, just the basics of, being able to do your classes and to take the workload and to do research. And then, it's just that adjustment period is different for a lot of people. So I think it is something to consider is, whether or not you need those first year or two to really like nail down those fundamentals. Because I think personally for me, I would have done a lot better if I had first, I guess, solidified that sort of base for, just taking those upper division courses. Because the great thing about CCS is you can skip a lot of prerequisites to take classes, and that's worked great for me for a couple of classes and not so great for others. So you have to be really careful about what's right for you, and I guess whether or not you can actually do it. And that's where advising also comes into play, is having an honest conversation, saying, do you think I can actually do this at this time, or should I wait till later? So it really comes down to being really honest with yourself, and I think that's, I think in terms of, I guess, after that sort of stage, it's really awesome because you can take, because you're a CCS student, it's really easy to, just approach professors and just have a conversation about, oh, what classes are you offering? Or, what kind of, we're asking about the research and things like that. And because you are a CCS student, they will, they're very interested in knowing what you want to contribute to that as well. So yeah, I think in terms of workload though, that's something that is, it's not for everyone. So, you have to be careful and just be really honest with yourself when you're sort of having that conversation or trying to make that decision between that or let's say the regular College of Engineering program or LNS program. So.
Here we go. Yeah, I don't think I've ever taken more than 20 units in a quarter. I guess I technically can. But I think that everyone has a number of classes that's right for them. And that's probably different for everyone, but it's important to know how many classes you can take in a quarter and, still have a social life and get enough sleep and do well in all of your classes, because sometimes if you're taking too many classes, some classes will kind of slip under the radar and you might actually have wanted to learn that. I really think it's important. I really try to do my homework ahead of time so that if I have a question, I can go to office hours. Because if not, like sometimes I'll have a question on my homework and maybe if I spent like 6 hours looking at that question, I could figure it out. But those are also usually 6 hours that I don't have. And so I can just go to office hours and get a hint and keep going on that homework. I think that I actually had an easier time my first year with the workload than high school somehow, because in high school, I would only have like 1 or 2 hours of homework a night, but it would not be homework that I enjoyed. Like I would have to like write an essay or something and I'm like, oh, I hate this. And I would procrastinate and I'd have a hard time. And then my freshman year, I would like maybe work for 8 hours a day on a homework problem, but I was having a lot of fun. So I think that it helps me with the workload that I do enjoy my homework a lot of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't have too much to add other than kind of a theme that Richard and Carl and everyone else have been really trying to emphasize, which is just flexibility. I think that's probably one of the biggest features of the CCS program is just the amount of flexibility that it affords us as students. If we want to go really fast and we want to take 24 units and then we want to take a 2 or 3 grad classes after that, it's possible. And if we don't and we want to take a more measured pace, then that's also possible. And so it's really up to you as a student, just to going into every quarter to just know what you're getting into, and talk it out with your advisor. And usually there's one quarter where you take on too much, kind of a CCS rite of passage, and then after that, you learn, you get used to college, and smooth sailing from there.
One of the questions, or one of the variables, maybe I'll toss in before we go to our faculty, is we had a number of questions from students who are possibly interested in double majoring. So I guess the variable I'll add for our faculty advisors is when a student is thinking about double majoring, how does that change their workload or change the advising process?
You want to go first, Richard, or?
I don't know if you want to flip the coin. You can go for it, Carl. Why not?
So for the non-double majors, I think some people can handle a lot of units. I don't think it's a good idea. I try to tell people it's better to take 2 or maybe 3 classes and learn them really, really well than take like 6 classes and just barely get by. But as Josh said, it's kind of rite of passage. Everyone tries to do that, which is fine. But one thing to remember is college is a very special period of your life, and it's not just about taking classes. I mean, everyone that's in CCS is going to work hard, and we'll keep you busy, and you'll learn a lot. But at the same time, don't take so much that, as Brian experienced, that you can have a social life at all for that quarter. Just still have enough time to walk around Isla Vista and have some fun. Double majoring, in my experience, has been difficult, mainly because inevitably required courses are going to be offered at the same time, and that kind of delays one of your majors by some amount because you have to take one of them. It is a lot of work. What I've heard from students is not not worth it, trouble. But certainly the ones who have succeeded are outstanding people in terms of academics. It's just logistically difficult and if you want to finish in 4 years, and you should finish in 4 years or less.
Yeah, I agree with Carl. Just to kind of go back to the point in terms of balancing workload, I try to emphasize to the computing students that everyone is different and everyone has a different path. Everyone has a different background, and it's okay to be in the program and not take 24, 28 units, even though we do have students who do that. And for me as an advisor, I try to push students as much as I can if that's what they want. And it could be a learning experience like Brian's, like, wait a second, maybe this was not the bad one, like this was not the greatest choice. And, that's fine. But some students are just like, 28 units was okay for me. Let's try to up it. And I'm like, okay, but are you sure? But I try to give the students the flexibility. But like I said, it is something where everyone is different. Some people, maybe the best choice is to really gain a solid foundation before approaching upper division, not try to muscle through it. And other students may just say, I'll just pick up the pieces along the way, and that's what makes them happy. Everyone is different, and that's kind of where advising comes in, and we want to make sure that students kind of know what they're getting into and let the rest kind of be life experience at that point. In terms of double major, yeah, CCS computing and CCS math is one of the more common double majors, I would say. CCS computing and physics is kind of the other common double major. We don't have too many double majors because it is a hard path. This is a very, high workload programs kind of that every student has to go through. And it is something that if a student really wants it, then of course, CCS does provide the flexibility of doing double majors within CCS and also double majors within other parts of campus, but some restrictions in computer science. But yeah, it is something where completing it in 4 years is more difficult than maybe like, I'll try to do it in 5 years, but it is possible. There are a few students that have double majored in CCS computing and CCS math and are graduating within 4 years, which, in my mind is great. So in any case, it is possible. At that point, usually you will have 2 advisors, one on the CCS computing side, one on the CCS math side. And then we just want to make sure that you're checking off, your requirements for the particular program that we're advising you for. So not for the faint of heart, but definitely possible.
I think Erin wanted to add a point as well. So we'll give her the floor.
Yes, I was muted. It's actually really interesting because I came in as a freshman really wanting to double major in something that was almost completely unrelated to computing. I actually wanted to double major in film and media studies because I was really interested in, I guess, interdisciplinary media arts and things like that. I know a lot of professors who were in film and media studies who I thought would be really cool to work with, but it really comes down to, again, like the logistics of double majoring, because one, if you are double majoring in a major that's an LNS, you also have to meet those general education requirements, which is definitely more substantial than the GE requirements in CCS, which, is another benefit of CCS. You have that flexibility in your GEs, but yeah, so I really wanted to, I guess, have that experience, parallel my experience in, computer science, but also at the same time, I realized that just in terms of the workload of the computing major alone, it's a lot. And, I think it's a lot better. I think it's more common and a lot more doable to double major in a very like sort of adjacent field like physics or math or, I think those two fields, like I guess in that realm, are often a lot more doable because you're already taking courses that fulfill the prerequisites for that other major. But if it's like something completely unrelated, I think a lot of other students have that question too, of, you know, double majoring in something that's like basically like there's like no overlap with the major in CCS you're trying to pursue. I think it's difficult, but you can also, you know, instead of double majoring, you can also just take courses in that field and maybe count it as a GE. Like it doesn't have to be for the major or for the minor, you know, you can just take it just because, you know, you enjoy it, and that's fine, and still have it count for your degree, but you don't need that label of having major, you know, double major. So that's like one thing to consider.
I'll just say that I love hearing Erin say this as the staff advisor, that part of one of the things that I speak to with students very frequently is general education requirements. And CCS has sort of a very different approach to GEs than a lot of the rest of the UCSB, in that students are required to take 8 courses outside of their major. And by major, we don't just mean like that specific department, we mean like major field of study, like get out, like explore something totally new and do a range. Pick classes from a range of departments. You really can't do more than 2 from any one department. So Erin would have done 2 classes in film and media studies, and that would have been 2 GEs out of the way for her. And then maybe a literature class or a philosophy class. Or one of the things that is so beneficial about being at UCSB and about being at a large institution is that there is such a range of departments that I guarantee you've never had access to before in your education. So if you think that a class in Asian American visual culture sounds interesting, then like go take that class, because that will be interesting. So there's this opportunity within UCSB and as part of a CCS student to pursue those interests outside of the kind of more traditional realm of your major, because you will take a lot of classes in your major. So, you know, also look at it as a way to kind of spread your wings or try something a little different. The other thing I'll add too is, you know, maybe not a double major, but you can minor in the College of Letters and Science as well. And that might be more approachable depending on your schedule. So the College of Engineering doesn't have any minors, but there is a range available in Letters and Science. Not every department has a minor, but that's sort of where advising takes over and just the ability to explore and find out more about UCSB. I want to point out too, just as everyone's talking about like social life, that UCSB and CCS is literally within view of the ocean. So I do think it's always kind of a marker of students, like, you know, when was the last time you went to the ocean? And if the answer is like, not this quarter, then it's kind of, well, you know, maybe you should take like half an hour and go do that. So we do try to encourage our students to have just some moments of like restorative energy that are outside of the kind of 4 walls of academia too. So there's those opportunities within UCSB to sort of find some things to take joy in and to kind of feed that part of yourself as well. One of the things I want to touch on as well is, so we've talked about coursework a lot, and some of you have mentioned like additional research. And I want to ask you, what kinds of research or creative activities are you currently involved in? And how did you get started doing that at CCS?
So before I talk about research, I'll need to talk about the other creative activities. So as kind of like someone who's done a lot of programming, I really started with my computer science journey before college. I learned programming by myself when I was, I think, not even high school, but middle school. That was when I kind of got interested in computers, and I kind of taught myself from books, websites, how to do these kind of things, and it made me interested in, oh, I can just write software and I can just put it out in the wild online, and people can kind of comment on it and use it, and then we can kind of play around with different ideas. And that was what got me started with was so-called open source software, right? That's this kind of big movement that you guys might have heard about already, but it's really interesting to me, and is basically something I did in my free time, and I basically carried it over to CCS. And still doing it here, right? And what's really nice is you get all these amazing classmates to work with, right? And then you can easily collaborate on something that you guys are interested in. And this is something I've done in the past and maybe still doing now. So yeah, I write a lot of open source software. It's mostly just kind of silly things, but also more public things. One of the bigger projects I've been working on is a software for note taking, and basically you can use a graphics tab. Let's see, use something like this, and then you get one of these digital styluses, and then you can write on it, and then it will get copied to the program, and you can treat this basically as a piece of paper, right? It's like a virtual piece of paper. You can draw on it or whatever. I made that note-taking software mainly because I was frustrated with one of my classes, which required you to write on PDFs. That's something that I would highly discourage professors from doing, assigning homework to students in which the students have to write on a PDF that they've handed out. It's really, really hard. But yeah, I basically just worked on that software out of frustration, and well, now I see that a lot of people all over the world are using it. So it's really nice because not only it's not just a one-way thing where I just send out something and then it goes out into the void. People are actually contributing back, right? And they're kind of helping, kind of exchanging ideas, and yeah. So that's the creative activity side of it. But there's also, as I mentioned, I've also been doing research. So I've been interested in programming languages, the theoretical aspects of them. And the way I got started was I was interested in a graduate course. So I took that. And then I really liked what the professor was doing in his field. I thought it was like really cool. So I just basically asked him, hey, are you looking for students? And he said, yes. And he was willing to take me on. And now we're working on a project that's kind of at the intersection between programming languages and kind of verifying properties of programming languages, like query properties of programs. So that's been really interesting. In fact, I even had a meeting with them earlier this afternoon, mainly because I made a lot of progress and I wanted to share it. But yeah, just if you want to get involved with research, it's that easy, right? You just talk to a professor and then see, what they think. If you have some idea, you can kind of pitch it to them. Or if you don't have any ideas, you can see where you're mutually interested, and then maybe come up with a project by yourself. In fact, that's what I did. I talked to him. I didn't have any clear idea in mind. Talked to the professor I'm working with, and we sat down for an hour, and then we just brainstormed a list of ideas that we both thought were interesting, and then we just picked one. And now I'm working on it. Right. So so far it's been a really great experience. I've learned quite a lot already. Even though it's been short, like what, 3 months? Yeah, it hasn't been very long.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess I can go now. So I guess I mentioned already that I did research in virtual reality and haptics. So I came into UCSB with an interest in, I guess, interactive media. And I think my freshman year, I was involved with a graduate student who was in the Graduate School of Education in Geberts. And so we're basically building a virtual reality game that teaches kids how to code. And it was interesting. And I learned a little bit about, I guess, how research works. That was just the sort of basis for understanding, how the workflow looks like. And then after that, I had a scholarship to do research over the summer within a haptics lab here on campus, which is in, I think it's in multiple departments, but I think it was in media arts and technology. And I was with Professor Jan Vizel, and I was basically building a virtual reality application for one of these haptic devices that my mentor built. And that was a really interesting experience because you're basically doing research for full time for the entire summer. And I learned a lot about how, I guess, how to write papers and how publishing works. And the different sort of things to consider when writing a paper. And so I thought that was really interesting. But I guess after that, I kind of realized that I wanted to go more towards the industry route and try, actually finding software engineering jobs, because I enjoyed, I guess, building things a lot, and I liked building things that were interactive and were user facing. And I guess in terms of research, there's only, I guess you can basically find any department here on campus and they're going to need computer programmers, but that's not necessarily like research. So I guess after that I had an internship over the summer, and I got to work with interactive devices during that internship too, and that was really cool. And now I have a software engineering job here on campus that's like remote, and I'm learning a lot about just software engineering, and I have an internship for this summer too. So I guess given those opportunities, I was able to figure out what my actual interests were, and figure out like, okay, I like this, but it would be better if my experience was more like this, and be like, oh, I can try working on these kinds of projects instead. And so I think it's great because you are a CCS student, you have that sort of outlet to try all these different things and then find out what really works for you. And so that was my experience in that case. And I found something that I really enjoyed, and I know exactly where I'm probably going to end up after I graduate. So yeah, I think it's awesome how you're given so many opportunities, and just because you are a CCS student, a lot of professors are willing to take you under their wing, or even if they're not necessarily in computer science itself, they're going to need programmers to help them out. So you also have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can use your skills and apply it to.
Okay. I guess right now, me and my advisor and my research partner is just trying to put together a paper of what we worked on over the summer. But this past summer, I was a part of the UCSB REU, which is like research experience for undergraduates. So it's basically it's kind of like a 9-to-5 job. Like they gave me a stipend and everything, and I just showed up there every day at 9 a.m. and left at 5 p.m. and got to do math research all day, which was really fun and a really great experience. Our research was kind of, I don't want to go too far into it, but it was involving like matrices and a lot of like numerical analysis, I guess is what it's called, and like placing bounds on things, and a lot of using a computer, which I am not a computer programmer. So that was really interesting for me. I got to learn MATLAB and all of that. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Math research isn't really, there's no like cool test tubes or anything. You just kind of sit around writing numbers on a blackboard and try to solve problems. But it's really fun, and it's really rewarding to be able to solve something that no one's ever solved before, even if no one's ever cared about it before. But it's still rewarding to get a solution to a problem.
Okay, so like I said in the beginning, when I came to university, I was interested in more applied math. So I saw that Allison just asked a question, can you do research outside your major? At UCSB, I'm right now in a mechanical engineering lab with Professor Francesco Bullo. So there's your answer. If you're interested in it, if you have taken some of the classes or did like the prep work on your own, or you've like done the work by talking to the professor, then it's totally possible to join any lab in UCSB. Like there's no limitations on it. As long as you're willing to put in the work and you're interested in it, you can do it. So my kind of path towards research began before freshman year in a program called SIMS, Summer Institute for Math and Science. Me and Aaron were actually part of the same program on the same team, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so we were working under a graduate student in Professor Francesco Bullo's lab. And just like having that connection later is what allowed me during my sophomore year, when I got a research internship to rejoin that lab, and that's where I've been for the past few years now, just doing work with them in robotics, and mostly like pathfinding algorithms for robotics. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm still doing research now. So like that involves a lot of things like computational geometry and dynamical systems, and that's kind of what what I want to work on for grad school and stuff. And this kind of ties into like the last topic too that we talked about in terms of schedule and classes. I think early on everyone wants to take a lot of classes, but then because you're in CCS and because you have the guidance and because you're constantly being exposed to new ideas, eventually you do kind of transition to a point where you have a lot of things that you're doing outside of class that you're interested in, or you have research, and you're going to like feel less of a need to take a bunch of classes because CCS encourages, like Richard said, encourages its students to just like get involved in creative activity. And that's where we spend most of our time, like, towards the end of college.
Richard, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the other kinds of research your students do, or one of the things that some of our participants might be interested in is what kind of research you do personally.
Sure. So just a note on research. I mean, it is not a mandate for CCS students to do research. It's not like you will not graduate if you're not in a research lab. But, you know, UCSB is an R1 top tier research institution. And, you know, my colleagues in College of Engineering CS, they're all leaders in their own respective fields. So the opportunity for research is really, really good here. And if that's something that you're not sure if you really want to do, then that's great. But, you know, as Erin kind of pointed out, her direction changed more into the industry route, and that's great too. And, you know, computer science is very lucrative with many opportunities in industry as well. So I just wanted, like, if anybody had questions like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do research, like, know that I will try to advise and encourage research as much as possible because the opportunities are great. But at the same time, it's not a mandate in CCS to do research. But do creative activities is a mandate in a sense where we do have this process called a mid-residency review, and it kind of checks up like, what are you doing outside the classrooms? How are you applying computer science? In terms of, like, you know, various research projects that students are engaged in, it varies. As Yash was saying, there's a lot of computing students that do research like in computer science, but then there's like computing students that do research on all parts of campus. And this kind of goes into like bioinformatics, material sciences, math. So it really is just kind of like, what are you going to do? Now, I would say that because of the, you know, the program requirements of being, you know, creative in our field of computing, I would kind of discourage students, not completely, and like, you know, I would say if the student didn't want to do anything computing related and wanted to like research on history of jazz or something like that, I'll be like, that's great. But at the same time, what are you doing in computing? But if there was something like, you know, jazz related, if you want to do data mining of some sort, or do something like, you know, develop a simulation software or whatever, as long as it's computing related, that's kind of where I would push my students to do that. So there's that. In terms of research itself, like, so Carl and I, we have kind of a unique position in the university. We're kind of a rarity. Our focus is more on teaching. So our kind of working title, we are teaching professors. So the way I kind of explain it is our emphasis is going to be dealing with students and, like, you know, advising students and teaching classes. But, you know, we do dabble in research as well. And kind of the research faculty, the more traditional role in the university, I don't know, they do something like 80% research, 20% teaching. And the way I think about it is we do 80% teaching and like 20% research. My research kind of goes, like, when I was in grad school, I did a lot of cloud computing research, distributed systems kind of work. That was kind of when I was in industry. I worked in Amazon. I worked for an AWS group there. As well. And now I kind of deviated a little bit to pedagogical research. So interdisciplinary studies, I do game design and development for non-majors, using that as a way to, like, introduce computational thinking. Actually, Erin may not know this, but just the other week, The Graduate School of Gewurz, I'm consulting on this VR project that you started off with, and they just gave me a 0% appointment over there. So now I'm officially tied to that graduate school. So I'm kind of engaged in those just kind of interesting things. One of the great things about academia is I have a boss and I basically report what I'm doing versus being told what to do. This is what we call academic freedom. But I kind of have my hands all over the place. But, you know, my primary passion is just teaching, is really making, you know, helping students and teaching students as best as I can and making sure that they get everything that they want and achieve their goals and become way better than me in the long run. And that's why I do it. So that's my passion.
Okay. I think as Rebecca and Yash indicated, most of the math students' research usually comes from summer programs, or taking graduate classes and then getting to know the professors there. They typically, if they're not in pure math, it's usually involved with statistics. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we have one other person besides Josh working with an engineering professor. But usually it's statistics, like data science related, or pure math. It's usually in the summer. We do require, this is a minor change we're making. We do require some sort of creative AK research over the 4 years. It doesn't have to be like proving new results that have to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Just something would be nice. But yeah, summer. It's usually over the summer, and it's not just at UCSB. Rebecca was fortunate enough to get into our program last summer, but there's RU programs all across the country that we have are often placing people in. Oh, my research. I'm not super active right now. I'm trying to get back into it. My past research has been in quantum algebra, which is basically I work with polynomials, but the order of multiplication of the variables. So I have lots of variables, but I can't multiply them. X, Y is not YX. It turns out the stuff I was doing is related to this concept of totally non-negative matrices, which are matrices, all of whose subdeterminants are non-negative. And I'm trying to move in that direction now.
I know for me, it's always kind of really fascinating because like I'm frankly just not a stick person. So like I always really enjoy kind of hearing what these other people are up to, just because I kind of like learning about all your opportunities. What we'll do, since we're kind of at the halfway point, is I'm just going to kind of zoom out and like see everybody's little screens for a minute. And I just want to check in with all of our participants to just kind of get a sense of like, you know, are your questions getting answered? Is everything kind of going along in a good sense? So there's a little reactions button. You've probably used it before. Little thumbs up I'll just kind of check for those. And we've got applause and all kinds of stuff. So I just have a good chance to like not talk for a minute, just kind of check in with you guys. So I like kind of this halfway zoom out. All right, great. So some of our next questions are potentially even more sort of like student focused in terms of experiences that just professors and even staff don't really have, but we can speak to them as best we can. But for the students specifically, one of the first ones is, and this may be kind of speedy depending on this particular panel, but one of the questions that we see from some CCS students, or that's kind of a frequent question, is can CCS students study abroad? And I will say that the short answer is yes. Obviously, it's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something that some CCS students do pursue, and it sort of depends on the field as well. So I don't know if anyone on our panel has done that or anything like that, but I thought I might check in first. Erin has, perfect. So Erin, why don't you start us and then we can kind of go from there as well.
So I actually haven't studied abroad yet, but I am planning to for the fall. And yeah, it's definitely totally possible to study abroad, especially if you're interested in research. They do have a lot of opportunities to do research abroad, which I do know a lot of people end up doing. I know a lot of people who've done summer research internships. You know, I think previously mentioned there's a lot of programs at UCSB, but there are also a lot of programs at other universities and like abroad as well at other abroad universities. So that's definitely like totally possible. And for the fall, if everything goes okay, hopefully, I will be able to take classes that are actually not offered at UCSB, which is really awesome because there's I guess not only am I able to take classes that count towards like I guess my degree requirements, like for my upper division requirements, I'm also able to take other classes that are in computer science at another university that are like not offered at all at UCSB, but they can still count as upper division course units. So it's really, I think it's a really great opportunity because you'll be able to, you know, see what other courses these other schools have to offer. And you can also, you know, just experience, you know, what it's like to go to school to another country. So I would highly recommend it. And I have friends who study in computer science too, who also went abroad, and they also recommend it. So yeah, hopefully everything goes okay for the fall. We'll see. But for now, yeah, fingers crossed. For now, that's the plan. So yeah, it's definitely possible.
I also have plans to study abroad next spring. So yeah, it's totally possible. I would say for CCS math, it's a little bit more difficult. Just because if you want to study abroad, you're definitely going to have a crunch where you're taking like more classes during your sophomore year, which is what I had to do. Like I've been planning for this for quite some time, but it's totally possible. I mean, if you put in the work and you make sure you plan everything out to make sure your GEs and your major classes are out of the way, then you can do it. Usually either during like your spring junior year or during the summer. I think that's generally when it's happened.
I'll add that junior year does seem to be mostly typical. There are certainly other options as well, including summer programs, although whether that means that you would do that instead of an internship or something like that, that's one of those variables about planning ahead. But that's really the key component for CCS students, is to plan ahead and plan it with your advisor and like get that input of like, well, if I decide to go in the fall, like what classes are typically offered in the fall that like I might need to take in advance. And that's where the sort of cyclical expertise of someone who's been around for a while can certainly help you out. The other thing I'll add is that the study abroad program at UCSB, their acronym is EAP, Education Abroad Program. They're some of the most enthusiastic people I have ever met on campus. They absolutely want to help connect students to like what program is going to match their interests and their language skills and their financial aid needs. Like there are so many resources and components involved in studying abroad that really give a lot of it kind of additional flavor almost to your undergraduate education. And the way I've described it before is like you can walk into the study abroad office and just be like, I want to study abroad, and like people rappel down out of the ceilings. They're like, where do you want to go? And they absolutely want to connect you to those resources. So there's tons of enthusiastic support at UCSB for study abroad, and that's something that's a growing trend in sort of the student experience. So we just want to let you know that that is an option as well. I don't know if anyone else kind of wants to weigh in on that before we move on to the next kind of topic. Figured I'd check. All right. One of the other questions that is definitely student focused, because I have no experience with it, I know Richard and Carl don't have any experience with this, is living in a dorm at UCSB. And so Pindola is kind of a common thread, which is the CCS dorm sort of specifically. It's not restricted only to CCS students, and there's sort of a specific process of getting in. And that dorm might not always be Pindola, but there is CCS sort of community housing available. But I wanted to kind of go down the row and ask you about like, where did you live your first year? What was your experience like? just kind of general dorm talk. And I know that there's like housing offices who can just sort of talk to UCSB students in particular, but like as CCS students, how was that kind of added to your first year experience?
So when I did my first year, I was not in Pendola because I was admitted to CCS during the summer, and by then Pendola was full, so I didn't have any opportunity to go there. But I guess it was really nice that I was placed in San Miguel Hall, which is literally 3 minutes across from CCS, like the physical location of the CCS building. So I could literally get up at 10:55 a.m. and then go down to class in like 3 minutes. So that was nice. Just kind of a minor thing, but I feel like it's really kind of random who you're going to kind of be able to meet if you're not inside Pendola. So if you're in Pendola, you're going to be grouped with all the CCS people. That's going to be great, or you might not like it, but I would like to think that it would be great. If you're not in Pendola, then well, it's not a bad thing. Okay, so in fact, I had a great experience because you get to meet people outside of CCS, right? So I mean, you already get to see all your classmates in CCS very frequently in your first year. So it's kind of nice being able to meet other people who are not in CCS in your first year as well. And I was pretty lucky that I ended up on a floor that had a lot of people who were kind of from the same area and also had a lot of similar interests to me. So I met a lot of great friends, still friends with them, still in contact with them, still talk regularly. So that's kind of a nice thing. Also, going from kind of high school where you're like living at home with your parents or maybe living with other people with your own room is kind of a shock when you come to college where you now have to live with other people in the same room. So kind of be mentally prepared for that, or maybe you'll even if you're prepared, you'll still get shocked a bit that you're gonna have to share such kind of close space with some other people for a majority of the time that you'll be around, or you can just spend most of your day outside of your room and kind of not really worry about that. But, I'm kind of more of an indoors person, so I kind of saw these people a lot during my first year.
Yeah, so similar to Brian, I didn't live in Pendola. I actually chose to not live with, so I didn't live in Pendola. I actually lived in Santa Cruz Hall, which is also like literally right next to CCS, so that was super convenient for morning classes. But I did live with another person in CCS who was in writing and literature, so super different major, but also in CCS. So we went to a lot of orientation together, and we went to a lot of CCS related events together. But at the same time, I actually chose my roommates online. I know a lot of people go on Facebook groups and they find people to live with, and that's how I found them. But I guess it turned out I was super close to them in the beginning, and then as time went on, I wasn't as close to them because I actually had a group of other friends who I didn't live with. So I think there's a lot of pressure to feel like you have to make friends with the people you live with, but that's like definitely not the case, because you're going to end up making friends like, in whatever part of campus you're involved with. So I honestly wouldn't think too much about it. I think a lot of the people I know who've had the best housing experiences have lived with people who were completely random. But I will say though, people who live in Pendola are super close to each other. I remember, I think I was taking this was like my first quarter at UCSB, and I was doing like discrete math homework, and me and my friends just went over to Pendola, and I think Yash was there too. But basically we're like asking the CCS math majors like, hey, how do you do this problem? So it was like a really fun experience because they were all like kind of like popping their heads out, and they're like, oh, hey, like, what are you guys working on? And it was just like a really tight community over there. So I know you'll definitely make friends, and everyone there is very, very interesting, very quirky. But yeah, I wouldn't stress too much about housing, because either way, like, you'll find your friends and you'll find like your niche. Someone asked, let's see, How many years? Oh yeah, so most Pendola is like basically all freshman CCS people or just freshmen in general. But in Manzanita, I think it's all upper, or it's like people from I think first years to third years. So, and also it says dorm rooms. Yeah, so with dorm rooms, that's kind of yeah, I guess it's a personal thing because I most people I know their freshman year live with two other people, and I think as time goes on, people just live with one other person who is like their friend or something. So I think most freshmen start out living with two other people, and it's really funny because there's this joke how whenever you're walking around IV fall quarter, you always see groups of three because it's just like it's just people and their roommates like walking around together, and that's kind of like you stick with them for the first couple weeks, and then after that you sort of taper off, and you eventually find your own niche. But yeah, I guess in terms of my housing experience in my freshman year, it wasn't super significant. I'm not super close with the people I live with. Yeah, and I honestly could have lived anywhere else and it would have been the same. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't feel pressured to out where to live. But I do recommend Santa Cruz Hall because it's like the newest building and there's a lot of people there trying to make friends. So definitely recommend that one. But honestly, you'll be fine wherever you end up.
Yeah, I didn't live in Pendola. I lived in San Miguel as well as Brian. I was on the honors floor, I think. But yeah, I think Erin's right. Like my roommate ended up being random, and we ended up being like best friends. She was actually accidentally CCS, but we didn't like know that about each other before we picked each other. But yeah, I'm still really close friends with a lot of people who were on my floor freshman year. I think freshman year is great because you show up and like the first 2 weeks, everyone's just like hardcore trying to make friends. Like that, their primary goal in life right now is to just be friends with you. So I think a lot of people ended up making their really close friends in the first few weeks, and then maybe making other close friends later on in your first year or your second year. People at UCSB are just generally friendly. I think the one other people or two other people really depends on your personality. Like, are you introverted or extroverted? Are you going to want your own space? Like some of the time, because I only had one roommate my freshman year, so there would be whole like periods of time where I was alone in the room. So maybe you like that, maybe you don't like that as much, maybe you really like hanging out with people. I think it really depends on who you are as a person. And I think that UCSB students will I think most of them will stay in the dorms their freshman year. And then I moved out into an apartment in IV. So I currently, I don't live in university housings. I live in an apartment like close to UCSB. And then other people will kind of stay in the dorms their first 2 years. And then there's also university owned apartments that some of them will end up living in. So I think that's kind of the common things that people do.
Okay, so I was in Pendola freshman year, so I guess I'm the representative for Pendola for my year, at least in this panel. I really loved Pendola, honestly. It's not only CCS people. I know there were a few people my freshman year who wanted to be in Pendola but weren't able to because it got filled up, so that is something to like keep in mind. Pendola is not like a huge house. There is a limited number of seats, so just like keep that in mind, have a backup. But kind of like what everyone else has said, people at UCSB are really friendly, especially during those first few weeks. Everyone's trying to make friends. So whether you live in the CCS house or not, I don't think that'll matter overall. It's just like a matter of personal preference. Do you want to be around CCS people all the time, or do you want to maybe meet some people who are outside of CCS? Honestly, maybe the most practical things are like the bathroom situation. In Pendola, it's just like it's kind of like a single person bathroom. Once you go in, it's just you in there. Whereas I think in like Santa Cruz and some of the other halls, it's more like a community style bathroom. So there's a bunch of stalls and a bunch of showers in there and whatnot. And then in regards to like either having a double or a triple, in Pindola, there's only triples. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you want a double, then I don't think you'll be able to stay in Pindola just because there's such a high demand for rooms there. And then cost, I guess. Like for me, it was really obvious I wanted a triple because I didn't want to pay money for a double. That was not what I wanted to do. And yeah, so it's just really personal preference. Pindola is a lot of fun. By the end of like the first few weeks, you know everybody there. I'm still really close to actually both of my roommates who I stayed with in Pindola, and that was random. Like I didn't go on Facebook and make a group. I was just like, well, I know whoever my roommates are, they're probably going to be CCS, and I just chose randomly, and we're still really close, and we talk all the time. So it's going to be a good experience no matter what you choose.
All right. I don't think if there's anything that we really haven't touched on. I think we've gotten through kind of most of the big things. One of the things that we haven't talked about that I just kind of want to touch on is some people mentioned summer funding for different kinds of opportunities. One of the things I wanted to highlight is that there are specifically fellowships available within CCS, specifically for CCS students, as well as the funding opportunities that exist within the broader UCSB community in general. And because UCSB is an R1 institute, there are certainly fellowship opportunities for students that way. I don't know for this if we want to start with our faculty, just because you guys seem to have sort of a larger encyclopedia in your brains of what these kinds of opportunities are, or if we have students who've gotten these awards in the past specifically, if you'd want to speak to them first. So I know that's not the best moderating job I've ever done, but why don't we start with faculty and they can maybe do broad strokes. And then if we have students who can speak to specific experiences, they can say, and I got this one.
Question is funding for research?
Yeah, what kind of funding opportunities are out there?
Seems for the math students, the CCS summer undergraduate fellowships, the main, so it's not a lot of money, but it gives you a good health experience, which gives you an advantage for when you apply to RUs the next summer. If you did that in your second year, then you can apply for RUs in your third year, and having that experience is an advantage. But yeah, that and RU programs are the main avenues for math, at least. I know computer science is a little more has a little more money.
Well, okay, yeah. So yeah, in computer science, I mean, fellowships are kind of really standard. There's of course like the common fellowships that happen every year, big funding agencies that do this. To speak to Savannah's point, in CCS we do have a actual specific fund specifically for CCS students in summer called SUF, Summer Undergraduate Fellowship. And that's something that, like I said, it's exclusive to CCS students. No other entity on campus really can dip into those funds. And you apply for it, you know, like propose a research project, and the committee reviews it and awards, you know, funding. And mainly the funds are used for like cost of living, and you know, it's just basically to the students' pockets, so you can focus on your research. So there's that. And then of course, if you do get into research groups, in the CS department, for example, sometimes those professors have funds to allow students to actually focus on research over summer as well. So there are a lot of opportunities for funding and focusing on research. And it really just kind of depends on where you're pulling it from, but it's in various places.
I figure we'll check in with our students. I don't know if some of you I know are second year, so maybe you've applied and you haven't heard back yet. But if you have anything that you would want to add to that process, just kind of as CCS students, you're certainly welcome to do that.
I just wanted to talk really briefly about this organization called CCEP. I think it's Center for Science and Engineering Partnerships. And Yash mentioned briefly about this program called SIMS, and that's where I met Yash. And it's really awesome because CCEP is they have a lot of programs focused on getting undergraduates involved in research, and CSEP has, helped me a lot in finding research. And the program that Yash talked about before was called SIMS, and it's Science Institute for, what was it? It was a Institute for Math and Summer Institute for Math and Sciences, and
yeah.
it's basically it's basically like a program before school starts for freshmen that introduces them to research, and they get assigned graduate students, and you basically work on a project with them, and you get to meet all your friends, and that's how I met all my friends. But because of that, after my freshman year, I did Eureka, which is another undergraduate research program, and that was basically my entire summer, where I worked in the haptics lab, and they give you funding, so you basically get paid to do research. And they also have a lot of programs that teach you a lot about grad school and a lot about just how to present research, writing and research. And so it was a very, very supportive experience. And I think Yash did Gorman's, which is also another CSEP program. So yeah, if you're interested in finding funding, there's a lot of opportunities offered by CSEP here at UCSB, specifically for UCSB students. But yeah, just worth mentioning.
All right. I feel like we gave a pretty good summary and just even some specifics on that. So it's definitely something that in your time at UCSB will be part of the different kinds of conversations you have with your advisors as they're forwarding things out on the listserv, and you say, oh, wait, that sounds great. So it's definitely one of the ways that students have access to resources. So it is 4:30, and this is usually a good time to just kind of open it up to questions. So we've got some time to make sure that we can hear from most everybody. So if you open up your participants tab, what we'll do is if you raise your hand, you'll kind of pop up to the top of my list in the order in which you raised your hands. Siddharth, I saw already had a question in chat. So Siddharth, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, and then we could just sort of hear from you directly and then respond to that, I think. And then we'll do Hosea next. So Siddharth, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, like, if you get funding from our lab, like, do you work more on the research that the professor, like, in charge of the lab is doing, or is it more like research that, do you have some flexibility with, like, research that you're more interested in, I guess?
So I would actually say hopefully both. So hopefully they're the same thing, right? But in general, if a research professor has funds in their lab to support undergraduates, generally those funds are tied to a specific project or, like, a direction. So I wouldn't say, oh, can you please give me money to, like, just kind of let me play around and do whatever I want? I mean, generally that's not the case, but hopefully if you are in that lab, you and your research advisor have negotiated kind of the direction, and it is something that you are passionate about. So hopefully it's the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I think we've got Hosea up next. So I'll go ahead and unmute you, and if you want to turn your camera on, you can do that too, but whatever works for you.
So I was wondering, since you guys were talking about, like, how you could research something not in that's not your major, can you take upper division classes that isn't in your major? For example, I want to be a computing major, and I'm interested in computational linguistics, but there's only computational linguistics class in the linguistics major. Would I be able to take that or no?
So speaking on the computing perspective, you can take a class as long as, I mean, I guess what your question is more, will it count towards your degree or not? Because, I mean, generally, as long as the professor of the class allows you to take their class, then you can take their class. Mm-hmm. And you can get the units for it, but will it count for your degree or not? So computational linguistics is a heavy, like, intersection with computing. And if there's, like, gray areas like that, that's when you would talk to one of your CCS faculty advisors, either me or Phil. We would probably review the syllabi and say, hey, you know what, there's actually enough computational aspects to this for it to count as an upper division elective, for example. So there's, like, little pathways like that, but that's more on a case-by-cases call. it's funny that you say computational linguistics, because actually a former student who graduated already, their main research focus was on computational linguistics. And they were doing a lot of stuff like detecting text and patterns in text for early Parkinson's, like, detection, which was really interesting. It was something I was like, whoa. But anyways, so in terms of, can I take a class? Sure. Can I take a class that will count towards a degree or count as an upper division elective, for example? That's a maybe, and it really just depends on the class, and it requires some review and discussion with your faculty advisors.
Mm-hmm.
I would add to that too, just as a kind of counterpoint. There's also those kinds of questions that happen with GE requirements as well sometimes too. So if you were to take that computational class in the linguistics department and you're like, haha, this linguistics is not computing, I have found a way around a GE requirement. And then you came in and you were like, Savannah, I'm going to take computational linguistics for GE. I'd be like, no, you're not. You're going to take computational linguistics for your own personal enrichment as a computing major, but maybe not for your personal enrichment as a GE requirement. So that is where there are multiple advisors available to you to clarify how these kind of gray areas will apply to you. So I wanted to add that as a variable too. We have Anmol next. And so Anmol, I'm going to unmute you and you can do what you like with your camera. And we'd love to hear your question.
Yeah, I had a question about the computing major at CCS. What is it most about, computer science or computer engineering?
I could answer that. I don't know if Brian or Aaron want to answer it. I don't want to like steal the show or anything. So I think Brian and Aaron know the difference. So if any of you want to jump in, if not, I could answer it.
I have friends who are in computer engineering too, and I guess the main difference is in computer engineering, it's more hardware focused. So I think if you were to do computer engineering in college engineering, you have to take like, I think the ECE 10 series, which is all about like circuits. And so it's a lot more physics focused, while computing, there's really not much hardware focus in it at all. I mean, you take like, I guess you take low-level classes like operating systems, or you take like computer architecture, but it's not necessarily hardware focused. And you do take physics, so that's a little bit of intro in that. And I think, I don't know, can you take the ECE 10 series if you wanted to, Richard? I'm not sure.
The ECE 10 series, what is that equivalent to in College of Engineering?
That's like, I think it's like the intro like circuit design classes. I don't know any computing major who's taken those. So
because I don't know about it, probably not. That's just because no other student has done it. I mean, of course, case-by-case basis, and I'm not saying that you cannot take classes in hardware if you're in computing, but they just may not be counting towards your major. The computing program is more akin to the computer science program in College of Engineering, which does a heavier focus on software, not hardware. Though, as Aaron said, there are a few courses where you kind of get the high-level hardware, but you're not going to be like, dealing with circuit boards unless there's an upper division class in computer science that counts for that. But in general, the major focus is on software and the theory of it.
One thing I want to add is that the computer science program at UCSB is really great at systems. So if you're interested in low-level aspects of software, then the program at UCSB might be a really good fit for you, because there's a lot of experts here on kind of systems and distributed systems and architecture and that kind of thing.
Great. I think we got your question. Okay. And Allison had her hand up next.
Hands-on of the classes, are they more like lecture focused or seminar, or on average, like what other classes?
Allison, I'll say your microphone was really quiet, so I didn't hear much of what you said at all.
Like, how hands-on are the classes? Are they mostly seminar focused, or are they mostly lecture focused, or like how much projects do you do, and how the class is structured basically?
Are you specifically asking computer science or math?
Just in CCS.
It depends on the class, I would say. CCS is small seminar style classes, so typical size, maybe about a dozen or so, which is a different experience than you'll get in other parts of campus. I mean, a typical College of Engineering computer science class would be in like, maybe 100 to 120. So there's that kind of lecture style focus versus seminar or style focused classes, and a lot of it is collaborative. I mean, I can't speak for every faculty member or every class, but usually when you have a smaller group, you kind of run it more in a seminar grad style focus, where sometimes you do break off into groups. Maybe sometimes lecture time is used to work on individual labs or assignments or projects. And this is actually something that I think the students could attest to better than I can, because I could attest to my class. But, you know, from your experience, you know, Yash, Rebecca, Aaron, or Brian, if you have anything to say, that'll be great.
I think it's really going to depend on your professor and your subject and the class you're taking. So for kind of more, I guess, theory-ish classes, you're going to see more exams because it's kind of hard to assess theory. For more kind of practical things like, oh, you're going to build an operating system, or you're going to maybe like come up with some presentation, those kind of courses are going to probably be more project focused and probably more teamwork. But in general, it's really going to depend on what professor you have, because I know, for example, one professor for a course might assess using only projects, and then another professor might assign homeworks and final exams, but they're teaching the same course and it's basically the same subject, but they have different styles of teaching, so it's really going to depend on.
I'm going to add a variable in here, sorry, and then I'll let you go, Rebecca, which is that CCS students don't only take classes within CCS. So part of what your experience will be as you're completing your major requirements is you will be going to classes that are in other departments that are, and those kinds of things. So CCS students aren't only within that CCS umbrella. And then go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I would say that the freshman year math classes are very hands-on. Like Savannah said, I think our freshman year, the math majors are mostly in CCS. I think that other CCS majors are maybe taking LNS classes more their first year, but in our first year, the math majors are basically in CCS. Like that is where we're taking all of our classes. And I think that those classes were very hands-on. Like we were usually like working through problems and working with each other and stuff like that. I think that as I like left the CCS classes after my freshman year, the LNS classes are obviously a lot less hands-on. But I think the CCS math classes are pretty hands-on.
Yeah, Rebecca pretty much nailed it with the freshman CCS math courses. I guess another thing that I'd say is something that CCS students get that other students don't, is that we have quite a few special topics courses that come along in both computing and math, and those also tend to be like smaller seminar courses in advanced topics or just like more esoteric topics that the professor just feels like teaching. So those are always really fun. And those can be really, really different. Those can be project-based, those could be lecture-based. They run like, there's a wide variety of them. And then actually there's also, occasionally there's also student-led colloquiums. So those will usually be led by juniors or seniors. And those will be like, part of the homework could be like preparing material for you to give a lecture to the rest of the class, just like something that you've studied or you've prepared. And then some of it can be homework and some of it can be lecture based. And so it can really vary from week to week. And that's just one of the cool things that we have at CCS.
All right. Allison, I hope we answered your question. Did you have any sort of follow-up you wanted to ask?
Possible to take most of your classes in CCS until you get to the higher level, so you don't have to take any of the gigantic lecture classes outside of CCS?
I mean, I would say that depends on like which of the giant classes are being required, and that would depend on the major. So for example, like if you're required to take like Chem 1, then like you're gonna be in Chem 1, or things like that for different majors. But I will say that for the GE advising that I would do, that not all GEs are going to be like 800-person classes. So if you are still seeking that sort of more personal environment across the board, that is possible to do as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so Hosea is back on our list. So Hosea, go ahead, and we would love to hear your question.
So I was wondering, have there been, or is there any computing major students who have researched AI, and like, what are some examples of things they've researched?
So the answer is yes. There are a lot of machine learning and AI are really like hot topics right now in computer science. We do have like some superstar faculty who do specialize in research in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I mean, I guess a most recent example, we do have a student who recently won the Chancellor's Award for Research, who actually conducts research with one of the professors, William Wang, in machine learning, and maybe even dabbles with AI. So I do know in the past there are a lot of students who do specific research in machine learning, and this is something that is going to be available for CCS computing students. So hopefully that answers your question, unless you wanted to go a little bit more specific in like what kind of stuff in machine learning they're doing.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, great.
All right, we've got Samyak next. We'll go ahead.
All right, so I've got sort of a two-part question first. I know this is covered prior regarding doing a minor. So I was wondering that if you're in the math major, are you able to do a minor in computer science, for example, as opposed to doing the double major? And would that be a minor in computing through CCS or a minor in computer science through UCSB's engineering?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no computer science department doesn't offer minors.
Oh, okay.
So if they did, that would be totally fine. But unfortunately, it's not a possibility here.
Okay.
I believe any major in College of Engineering does not provide a minor. So if you're interested in computer engineering or electrical engineering or any of the College of Engineering majors, none of those in that college offer a minor.
That is true. I'll verify that. I was even looking at that this morning just to kind of refresh myself, and they do not offer any minors. And it's the same with CCS. We don't technically have any minors either. So all the minors that are offered on campus are through LNS.
Okay.
That's not to say you can't take a bunch of classes if you can get into them just for your own benefit.
Yeah. Okay.
It just won't be an official thing on your degree.
All right.
What would they count?
They do have a data science minor. So basically when you're in the minor, you can actually take like the intro CS classes. So that's definitely possible. And there's a lot of programming based classes you can take. So yeah, if you're interested in that, that's an alternative that a lot of people choose instead of, because we don't have a computer science minor.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Harry, you are next.
What I want to ask is, like, when you are doing research, do you do in a group, or like kind of in a group you have like postgraduates and other professors or other like graduate students, or do you like choose your own topic and do it by yourself and directed by the professor?
Are you asking about math or does it matter? Probably answer for both.
I'm doing computing.
Oh, okay. So maybe Richard should answer.
But you can answer that question. Yeah, that's definitely short. Yeah.
So I guess the short answer is it depends, but at the same time, generally the research labs are going to be populated with graduate students, and sometimes the demand for a lab could be very high. So maybe the professor says, why don't you just kind of get started and work with the graduate student and kind of see what kind of contributions you make, and then eventually kind of have a more prominent role in the group. I'm not to say that it's impossible to find a research professor that's willing to do more direct advising, but it really just depends. But in general, the graduate students are kind of part of the whole research experience in academia, and research labs are going to have master's and PhD students. So a lot of the times, more often than not, I would say it'll be a mix between graduate students that you'll be working with along with the actual professor as well.
So do you choose your own topic, or your topic is chosen by professors or other, like seniors or other?
I would say it's always a negotiation. I mean, because if the professor says, hey, do this, and you have no interest in it, it's not like you have to do it. You could always walk away. But it is really a negotiation. I think that a good, like, project would be something that both is going to be relevant for the professor's work and then also relevant for your interest. So it really is kind of a negotiation. And as Brian kind of mentioned, the process was just kind of sitting down with the professor, brainstorming some ideas, finding something that's common ground and interesting to both, and then starting to work on it. So I like, I think that it's that, is it what the professor wants or is it what I want to do? And I think that the goal is it should be the same thing.
Okay, thanks. I have a last question. It's about a quite general question. It's about the current situation. And because of the COVID-19, and I'm a Chinese student, so I cannot, if the school doesn't open in September, I think I'm not going to get to school. And do you have like online courses or like online like tutorial to CCS students? And also, I think we have like some time conflicts, because when you're in the afternoon and probably at night or like or in morning. So can you like arrange that or some other things?
You said you were computing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this question is for me because I am teaching the first quarter, first year computing course in the fall. And the short version is we do have a lot of the lab assignments are already online. It is one of the things where CCS is so collaborative, where it's kind of the difference between asynchronous versus synchronous lectures. But the thing is, because of the situation, and this is something that none of us could really predict what's going to happen in fall, my plan, if we do go remote instruction in fall, is to offer an asynchronous kind of like way to take the course for students like yourself who are international, that would need to or cannot basically attend components of the course. I would hope that there would be some synchronous components, so maybe like every now and then we could check up and I would be like, oh yeah, like who's a student? But at the same time, I completely understand the situation. I completely understand the hardship with the students, and this is something where if it is a required course, for example, or an entry point into the curriculum, like the first year, first quarter computing class, my plan is to design it in such a way where the vast majority of work could be done asynchronously offline, with possibly some synchronous components to it, but with the understanding of there are going to be students like yourself that would be, would benefit from the offline learning or option in this case.
Yeah, I think like offline learning is definitely like beneficial for CCS students. Yeah, thank you for your answer. Thank you.
All right, we've got Ted next. And go ahead, Ted.
Okay, so my question is kind of twofold. So firstly, which specifically for mathematics, when you describe these classes as being small or like project-based or hands-on, are those like the core mathematics classes, like Intro to Higher Mathematics, Problem Solving 1 and 2, or which classes are those?
I would say so. I'm not sure how they are, like real analysis classes have been handled, but for your first year classes like those in the linear algebra, that's what we mean. After that, you kind of get into the math department, up of classes which are more traditional, in the sense of being lecture based.
And okay, so I guess my second question is, so not being able to visit or sit in on classes, like especially Yash described, being really liking what he saw when he sat in on those classes, and so both to the professors and the students, like could you give some more specific examples of what was special or hands-on about those classes?
Sure. Since I'm the one who said it, I guess I'll respond to the question. I think what was special about it was just the fact that it wasn't the teacher just talking about the subject and then a student occasionally just asking for clarification or asking a question. It was specifically like, so here's what we're going to go over in class. This is some core idea, and then let's discuss the subject. Or what are some ideas that you could have that are based on the material that we did last time we met? What is a theorem that you think is something that, I guess I'm talking specifically about linear algebra. So the way the linear algebra class was developed is very much interactive. It was the students offering ideas, it was the students discussing ideas, and it was almost more like the professor is a moderator who's bringing everyone together to discuss and lead the class, rather than them being the only one who's offering ideas or information. And then in regards to the other classes, like problem solving, they're very much project-based. Like it's literally the professor gives out problems, and then the students break into groups, and then we discuss them and we work on them. And then towards the end of problem solving 2, there's it's project-based and presentation work. So we have some sort of bigger problem. We work on it in groups, and then we also give presentations on it, and that builds the group-based skills, so working in groups, and it also builds the presentation skills that are really important for a lot of the stuff we do in math and in CCS in general. So that was like the special part of it. It wasn't one way. The classes were, everyone was involved.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I'll add too, and this might be me volunteering somebody else, but there are probably faculty who would be willing to let you observe their class as a prospective student if you reach out. So I would say check what's on the schedule, and if there's something that maybe you'd be interested in seeing, shoot that professor an email and explain that you're interested in coming to UCSB. I would target specifically a CCS math class and just ask if it would be possible. Carl, I'm sure you're going to want to actually specifically speak to this though.
No, just email me and I'll try to get you. I'm not doing Zoom lectures for my class this quarter, but I can try to get you. I will try to arrange that for you.
Cool. That sounds good.
All right, we've got Emil next, and then Allison, and then I think that might be all we have time for today, but I'll just kind of pre-state that obviously if you have any questions, feel free, you can email me, you can email faculty, and we will try to answer your questions as best we can. My general advice is if it's sort of like CCS, big picture, like orientation related, all that kind of thing, it's good to email a staff advisor, and if you have something sort of specific about your field of study, I would recommend faculty. But Emma, we'll go ahead with you, and go ahead and let us know what your question is.
I had a couple of questions. The first one was, what kinds of resources do students majoring in computing have? For example, do we have a supercomputer that we can use?
So in the computer science department, there's not a supercomputer in that department that I know. I mean, we have an infrastructure, ECI, engineering computer infrastructure, where you can like remote work from like, Unix systems and so on. We do have a supercomputer on campus, but I don't think that's actually affiliated with CS, but I believe that you could apply for access to it. It really depends. I think that we have resources for anything you can kind of conceive of. It's just kind of like, finding the appropriate person managing that and then getting access to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually, I'm not a computer science major, but I did use the supercomputer last summer. As a UCSB student, you do have access to a supercomputer. I don't quite know who runs it, but you do have access to that.
Okay, my second question is, when do we as incoming freshman undergraduates sign up for our courses?
So some of that happens during orientation. It hasn't been nailed down 100%, but like we're 99% of the way towards orientation being a virtual process. So one of the things that happens during CCS orientation is that Megan and I would sit down with you and like kind of help you get signed up for those classes that you would take fall quarter. So there is a process of kind of guiding each student kind of into that step and helping you with like sorting out your prereqs from the AP classes you took and what are you going to hit into where. And for different majors like math, I mean, if you're in CCS math classes, then that means you're going to start in CCS math classes. So that's kind of very straightforward. And then for other majors, there might be something more sort of tailored to the student. But there'll be some that are really obvious and we'll help you get signed up for those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Allison, you might be our last question of the day. So go ahead.
Oh, I think you're muted, Allison.
Hi. I was wondering I might want to take a gap year if school doesn't open as a non-virtual thing, because I mean, it'd be okay if it was virtual for a few weeks, but I don't really want to spend a whole semester of my first year as a gap year. So like as a virtual thing. So I was wondering if I did a gap year, would I have to reapply to CCS, and how hard would that be?
It's not something that I have a ton of experience with just because I haven't been at CCS long enough to sort of see a history of that. But my my conservative guess would be yes, but I would want to double check just because there is an effect of size on the cohort of each major. So if a student were to defer their admission for a year, that would be one of the components of going into the following year is then what size is that major going to be? And that would be something that the faculty would need to discuss, I think, in terms of deferral of admission offers. Just because that's also true of students who apply to CCS from other colleges, is that if they don't take the steps to transfer into CCS within time, then their offer of admission does expire. So we haven't asked those questions specifically yet of each other, but that would be what I would plan for, as opposed to assuming that a seat would be guaranteed for you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, I think that might be our last question for today because we're at 4:59, so this was very, very exact. I feel kind of super proud of myself. But I just want to take the time to say thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been our largest panel by far, based on major, and it's been a thrill to see so many of you engaged and have such specific questions. And I also just want to say thank you to our panelists for giving up 2 hours of their Monday afternoon to just kind of talk to prospective CCS students. So my little virtual quiet applause. And I just want to say thank you again for all your time this afternoon and for asking and answering such great questions.